Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of UMass Sports Weekly. I'm your host, Chris Corso. We'll start things off tonight with some great news for the UMass football program as a whole. Gene Sifrin, the starting tight end for the Minutemen this season, was the main attraction at the Massachusetts football team's Pro Day. The 6'5" tight end participated in a series of drills for NFL scouts on Monday. Sifrin is projected to be drafted in the later rounds of the NFL draft, but has unique promise as a 27-year-old prospect. The tight end was followed by cameramen of Bleacher Report and Esquire throughout the day. Now let's kick things off with UMass highlights, and let's roll that tape. Let's start things off by checking in with Coach McMahon and the women's lacrosse team's pair of games at McGurk Stadium last week. Then we'll cover the Minutemen's game against Army. And then we'll provide some coverage of outfielder Kyle Addy and the UMass baseball team as we round out our list of segments for the night. We'll be right back with all this and more. This is UMass Sports Weekly.
This is UMass Sports Weekly.
Welcome back. The women's lacrosse team hosted George Mason on Sunday at McGurk Stadium. The team was coming off of a dominating 10-2 win against Duquesne a couple days before. See if the Minutewomen could continue the success with a perfect record at 4-0 at home this season. Here's our own John Andersen with the story.
UMass taking on George Mason in some A10 matinee action this past weekend. Hannah Murphy had 4 goals in the first half, and Nicole Trost also had 3, making for a 10-goal first half for the Minutewomen. Also in the first half, the Patriots were able to net 2. However, the score at halftime came down to 10-2. Now, how many goals can UMass score in the second half? Well, let's see. Is this the second one? The third? Oh God. Oh no. There's just a lot of goals scored by the Minutewomen. Poor Patriots right now. Playing for pride, George Mason was able to score 4 goals in the second half as well, but it doesn't matter because 17 goals is a lot more than 7. UMass Minutewomen coming away with the victory. Rachel Valarelli, A10 Player of the Week, and UMass takes a lead in the A10.
Welcome back. We're here for the women's lacrosse segment, and we just saw what a great win in that George Mason game. And we talked about that 10-2 win before that. And I'm here with John Andersen, and he's our expert for the women's lacrosse team. And John, earlier in the season, we talked about how deep this roster is because we know it. They're 9-1 on the season. They're playing well. They're playing great under Coach McMahon. In what ways did that show in these past 2 victories?
Well, especially in the game against George Mason, there was actually 12 different Minutewomen scored goals, and that's just goals. Don't even get me started on assists, because there's a lot of those too. And we have defensemen coming upfield and scoring goals for them as well, so it's not just the forwards getting in on the action. I would also like to mention that in the draw controls department, yes, it was the draw controls department, 27 of 41 between the 2 games, and that's not just Hannah Murphy doing all of those. But speaking of Hannah Murphy, 4 goals in the first half of the game against George Mason. 4.
Wow.
Unprecedented.
So she's playing well for sure.
Absolutely.
So what was so special about these 2 wins? You had some specifics going with these 2 victories. What was so special for the Minutewomen?
Well, what was so special about them is that they were both A10 matchups. They're now 2-0 in the A10, and coming into this game, George Mason was actually if you go overall record, obviously there haven't been many A10 games played yet, but George Mason was actually the second best team in the A10, just going off of record. Mm-hmm. And they just beat them 17-7. So they're clearly going to run away with the A10 this year. And I was actually asked before the show by analyst Marc Jean-Louis, is this just a good team, or are they just playing in a bad conference? I think it's a little bit of both. Like they're a very good team. They just happen to be playing in a bad conference. But if they're going to beat the second best team 17-7, then clearly they're running away with this. And if they get a lower seed in the A10 tournament, this is theirs. Obviously, teams like Richmond and LaSalle have moved ahead of George Mason now. They'll play them in a few weeks. We'll see how that turns out. I don't see them losing another game this season.
Well, you talk about this conference play in the Atlantic 10, and looking forward, how big are these 2 wins for the conference play coming up? We got the heart of that schedule of the A10 coming up for UMass. How do you feel we'll do?
Well, I think I pretty much answered that with the last question
No,
too.
definitely. But how big are these 2 wins going forward? I'm saying.
They're obviously great wins going forward because you have those 2 wins in the A10 in your back pocket, and now you go forward. All these teams coming in, you're there. It's the intimidation factor at this point now. Now you're just going to intimidate all the teams like, oh, that's the team that beat George Mason 17-7. They were the big dogs, George Mason. Now we got UMass swooping in, completely destroying George Mason. They're going to have their way with Richmond too. All those the records only go down from UMass. UMass is what now 9-1,
Yep.
And now the next 2, Richmond and Virginia, are like 5-3, something like that. Only 5 wins. It only goes down from there. So, like I said, they're just going to prowl on this conference for the rest of the year.
Well, that's only good news for them going forward. Are they ranked yet, John?
They're not ranked. They received votes this year, this week. Unfortunately, they did 2 weeks ago when we had that whole ranking thing. Like right after that show, they got bumped up to number 20.
Yeah.
But then after the loss to Albany, they bumped them down, which is ridiculous because there's teams that have like 4 losses that are ranked right now.
That is ridiculous. Well, hopefully they run through this Atlantic 10 schedule, and we're looking for them to be ranked because they're definitely one of the top teams, and they have one of the best defenses in the country.
Number 1.
Number 1, exactly.
Number 1.
Number 1. There you go. There it is right there. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Yep.
We'll be right back, and we'll be talking about the men's side of things. Stay tuned.
Hey UMass fans, this is Brittany Collens from UMass Sports Weekly to give you this week's Minutewomen schedule. We kick things off tomorrow with baseball at Boston College at 3 and softball versus Yale for their home opener at 4. The Minutemen take a day off Thursday but get back to work Friday, April 3rd as baseball and softball take on GW at home at 3 p.m. Also on Friday, women's track and field host Boston College and Rhode Island, while men's track and field participate in the Sam Howell Invitational. A busy week for softball and baseball as they take on GW again Saturday, with softball having a doubleheader. Also on Saturday, men's track and field will take part in the Yellow Jacket Invitational. Women's lacrosse will travel to New York and play the Bonnies at noon, while men's lacrosse hosts Fairfield at McGurk Stadium. If you aren't supporting men's lacrosse, take a bus over to Hampshire College to see women's tennis play Fairleigh Dickinson in one of their few matches left at home. To close out Saturday, rowing will travel to Boston to take on both Boston College and MIT. Up next on Sunday is baseball playing GW for their final game of the weekend series. Monday is a rest day for our athletes as next Tuesday things pick back up with baseball in New York versus Siena. This is Brittany Collens for UMass Sports Weekly. Go Minutemen!